Welcome to FOBtv, the future of business. I'm your host, Kevin Benedict. I'm a futurist here at TCS, and I'm very excited to welcome all of you to the show today. Our guest is a good friend of mine. She's a brilliant futurist. She's a lecturer. And my colleague again is Alex Whittington. Thanks for joining us, Alex.
Hi, Kevin. Thanks for having me.
Now, at TCS, there's a bunch of us. Not a bunch of us, I guess. There's a handful of us that are futurists here on the Future of Business team, and we're all kind of doing different projects and doing different things. So it's often fun to get together and just say, so what kinds of cool projects are you working on today? So Alex, why don't we just start out our conversation that way? What kind of fun projects are you working on now?
Great. Yeah, that's a great question because between us, we're always doing exciting stuff. Lately, I have been involved with the TCS movement called Digital Empowers. This is a series of online seminars around different topics super relevant to the future. One of them is actually on the future of work, things like economic inequality and healthcare. And I sat on a panel recently on the topic of food insecurity, which is such a big topic, such an important issue with, just complexities galore. We everything from agriculture to economics to climate change and weather, animal rights, and health, you name it, it's in there. So we had a really lively discussion with, I think, about 100 attendees online, which I think was great too. And we had partnered with an outside organization, TCS did. So it was reaching an even broader audience than just our organization. And so I got to talk about things like self-fertilizing crops, for example, right? We talked a lot about self-driving cars or self-driving tractors, even if you think about food. But there's this concept where we could engineer certain crops to fertilize themselves, to pull the nitrogen or whatever it is out of the environment, out of the soil, so we don't have to add chemical fertilizers. So we talked about that kind of stuff. It was very interesting. And, I just love being able to explore new ideas, especially with a panel of experts. The other panelists were actually food experts. So it was nice to have that kind of discussion with me, the futurist, asking them and responding to their, comments and stuff.
Oh, how fun.
Yeah,
Fascinating area too. I was able to spend 5 years of my life on a dairy farm milking cows. Matter of fact, that's how I paid for my university studies, is milking cows. So yeah, I'm a lot of alfalfa, a lot of hay, a lot of silage corn. So I know that much about it. Drove a lot of hours on a tractor as well. So let me just start out with, and thanks again for sharing what you're working on now. So this kind of is a good segue into this question too. Some futurists, Alex, see themselves as really objective observers, just reporting the data, while others view themselves more as activists with a responsibility to promote a better future. Where do you find yourself on that spectrum?
I definitely find myself on the advocating for a better future spectrum, on that side of the spectrum. I came to be a futurist after studying anthropology in college. And that was one of the things about the social sciences that I did not like, was how we're just supposed to observe and analyze and not really have an opinion one way or the other on how things should be or could be. So I couldn't imagine going in to study a culture or society or something, or, do field work with people and see something really wrong happening and not be able to say it, not be able to encourage people to turn the way things are going, right, to direct or to inspire things to be better. So that's actually a big reason I think I became a futurist, because I wanted to have the freedom to say, here's what I think, or here's what do you think? What do we collectively want, and how can we make that happen, instead of just saying, oh, well, this is what is.
So based on that, Alex, let me ask you another question. It seems like if you are going to advocate for a better future, there needs to be some kind of a North Star that guides us in the direction of where we think a better future is. So for you, what would you say that North Star is?
I'm going to refer again to my studies in anthropology, because that's all about studying the human being, right? How do we adapt and evolve and change over time, and how do we live in our natural environment, right? How do we take what's around us to make the tools or to achieve the goals that we have? And so I think that one guiding principle should be living in harmony with nature. I mean, we're part of this ecosystem of the planet, of nature and animal life and plant life and the air and all of these things. I think that finding a way to balance our activities, and I think this is something that won't surprise anyone. There's a huge movement towards sustainability, but finding a way to live more in harmony with natural systems and still maintain the quality of life that we've come to expect and enjoy. I think that is a guiding principle for me as like the best possible future outcome.
Oh, that's just beautiful to hear. Part of probably one of the primary roles of us futurists is to envision those future scenarios and then kind of reverse engineer those scenarios and say, what's it going to take to get there? And then kind of make those incremental steps or define those or work with people to define those. So you wrote about the potential impact of artificial intelligence on the workplace. What do you think that impact is going to be?
Well, I'm the only author that's ever written an article on AI and work, as you know. So I'm sure everyone's happy I made that contribution at last, made that connection, right? This is a topic that's been written about and talked about. It's such a hot button issue. I mean, it refers to so many important things, right? Economy, jobs, people's livelihoods, AI, and the idea that artificial intelligence is perhaps getting smarter or competitive with human intelligence. But I wanted to take a different kind of look, which goes beyond just, well, how is AI going to put us at risk or maybe threaten our jobs or maybe just, make us more productive? I wanted to kind of get beyond that level and talk about how the future of work is more than AI. It's more than automation. It's actually something that we can have a vision about, kind of like what we were just discussing, and make it more in the shape that we want it to be. Right? Because we look around today and we see there's different trends going on, whether it's the quiet quitting or the resignation trend that's been happening. People are quitting their jobs and there's this discontent, I guess, among workers. People are starting to unionize more. And I think a lot of these things are great. People are starting to say, what do I want to do with my time? Is this how I want to spend my life? So I think that there's a future of work beyond AI, which is productivity. I'm talking about AI is productivity. AI is increasing our operations in terms of like productivity and logistics and being able to achieve new levels of doing business, right? Whether it's manufacturing or farming or whatever you're doing, right? We're going to enhance it through AI. And I think that's part of the nature of what future of work will be. But I also think that AI will play a role in, letting people pursue what they really care to pursue, to let someone move from being, working in maybe a dangerous or dirty, undesirable kind of job to find something else that fulfills more of their purpose. And so I think, there's more than just automation, robots and chatbots or what have you to the future of AI and work.
Yesterday I heard the futurist Gerhard Leonhard talk about a work version of a food chain. So at the very bottom, you're working for just basic food and shelter. But as automation starts at the bottom of that pyramid and starts working up, where it can do the routine, dangerous, uninteresting kinds of work at the bottom, humans need to rise up in that food chain where more of what makes them human can be taken advantage of as value for all humans. What do you think about that statement?
Yeah, I think that's a really smart way of putting it. It's that whole hierarchy of needs, right? We can move up the ladder, so to speak, as our basic needs are met. So yeah, I think that that's a really good way of looking at it. And very humane. We really need to balance the enthusiasm for what AI can do for us in terms of financial returns, for example, and balance that with what it can do for people, right? Regular people and just make life better.
This analogy that's always in the back of my head. If you've ever seen somebody that can create animals out of balloons, it's like if you have a long, narrow balloon, if you squeeze one in, the air goes to another. To me, it seems like with automation and robotics and artificial intelligence, that the workplace might be like that balloon, whereas automation robotics kind of squeeze on one part, it's going to give humans the opportunity to focus on other kinds of work that we have overlooked, where perhaps it's not about just the meeting basic needs, it's about the quality of life, sustainability, harmony with nature, where we can invest more in those other areas and create new jobs in areas we had ignored in the past. What's your thoughts on that? Is that a Pollyanna view of what can happen with jobs, or do you think that's a possible scenario?
No, I think that's a possible scenario for sure. I mean, I think that one good example is this like AI Dolly, the artificial intelligence algorithm, whatever it is, where you can give it ideas. You put in your suggestions and it creates these art pieces. And I know you've looked into that a lot yourself. So that's sort of a way that people could perform like a graphic design job, right? Like today we have someone who's a graphic designer and they have to study this. Maybe it'll make it easier for people to cross that entry barrier to that kind of job. And it's going to change the requirements. It's going to change the workforce. It's going to change the type of people that are able to express themselves that way. So, yeah, I do think that there's a lot of there's plenty of reasons to be Pollyanna, in my opinion.
Matter of fact, if you notice the music on the front of this episode and at the tail end of this episode, all generated by AI as well.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I just completed that song, and April, our editor, is going to be adding the artificial intelligence generated theme song for our podcast going forward. So that'll be a lot of fun. So it seems to me that once the problem of meeting our basic needs have been met, that we might just switch our focus to quality of life. What do you think?
Yeah, I say, why not? I think that is, the reason that we as a society, get involved in innovation, right? We want things to be better. In the US, we really believe in that. Things can be better. We can improve. And ultimately, if it allows, people to have more free time or, have more help around the house. Let's just think about these home robotics and these AI software that are learning about us. If they could be helpful, right, not threatening or harmful, I think that's the direction we should go.
That's a key phrase that you just had here. You want it to be helpful, not threatening, because to so many people today, all this technology is a threat. And they're afraid of it. And I think that drives even some voter behavior. They want to avoid this very scary future and return to a time that they feel is less threatening and safer. And it all comes around changing. So one of the things you talked a lot about is the emergence of AI and different discussions around universal basic income. Perhaps AI will learn, and robotics and automation, all this kind of as one thing, will create enough value for humanity that could be shared across humanity in terms of income and covering more of our basic needs. If we can't work, can a robot work for us and we can be paid for some of that value as humanity? Talk to us about some of your thoughts there.
Yeah, well, UBI or Universal Basic Income, also known as minimum income or guaranteed income, this idea has been out there for a while as far as a way to supplement employees or people in the case of technological employment, right? And there's a bunch of different ideas how we can go about it. Maybe we would take taxes from work that's been automated, right? Tax the corporations heavily for the automating jobs and then use those revenues to give people money. And ranging all the way from programs that are like, here's money, people need money. We're going to, and it's mainly experimental. We're going to give you this X amount of cash and see how you do, right? Watch this community for outcomes. And they've shown in a lot of studies that it improves health outcomes. It improves social outcomes. Obviously, it helps lift people out of poverty. It's great for children. It's very good for expectant mothers. So already addressing the social problems that exist, universal basic income is showing to be quite effective. So in the case of mass technological unemployment caused by AI, right? If robots do take our jobs, there's this idea that governments or maybe even nonprofits could provide a basic wage so that people aren't out of luck with no jobs and no money. So I think that it's a popular idea that's been growing in society for quite some time. As these programs show how successful they can be, I think we're going to see a lot more people coming to the side of like, well, this might be a really good idea. This may be a way to make sure people have money and have what they need. And I think you could even expand the idea where you could have universal basic services, right? Universal basic food and water, universal basic utilities. The fact is that, the minimum wage worker, at least in the US, cannot afford a home, or not even a home, an apartment, I think was the study. They can't afford a 2-bedroom apartment anywhere in the United States, right? So until something shifts, these sorts of cash programs are going to be important, whether it's cash or the goods and services that people need, just because economic inequality, has become so extreme.
I'm a fan of the concept because I remember when I was back in the 20s with a young family where we didn't have insurance. And when your family physician said, I want to send you out to a specialist, you're like, no, I have no insurance. You're going to send me out somewhere that, I have no money for that. I remember times where, your battery stops working on your car or you have a flat tire and that blows your budget. So, you are so under stress at that very early age where you're barely squeaking by. Just the concept of having your bare minimum to keep the heat on and some protein in your family. And, it would have such a massive impact. I think to myself, because I've spent most of my career in kind of a creative role in strategy and being a futurist and things like that. You cannot focus on innovation, creativity, and all of this when you're desperate. You just can't, because your body and your mind is focusing every calorie to just survival.
For sure.
So you just wonder how much humanity would benefit just from the ability to have, innovation and creative minds that aren't desperate.
Exactly. And I think you make a really good point about the emotional and mental strain that people go through. And understanding that our society is sort of in a mental health pandemic that's been sort of rising for some time. This could be an important strategy, regardless of AI, just to address a lot of things that are missing in our modern society.
One of the things you wrote recently, it's time to envision scenarios for a future of work that is both financially and psychologically satisfying. Tell me more about what you mean there.
Yeah, I was thinking about that same mental health issue. There are so many people suffering from mental health challenges in our society, and a lot of what tends to be a source of the stress is the financial problems, the unpleasant work environment, sometimes the difficult commute, the overburdened, parent with the kids in school and maybe the aging parent, this whole sandwich generation, people pulled and stretched in a million different directions. And the high pressure and the relatively, inadequate pay for a lot of jobs contributes to a lot of issues that people deal with, in terms of maintaining their day-to-day mental stability to go on, like you said, to be innovative, to have creative ideas. So I think that the future of work, again, it's more than AI. It's about imagining, what do we want people to get out of work, out of a job? How do we want people to feel? Do we want them to go, and get burned out, to hate their boss, to feel like they have no options? I don't think that's the kind of society we want to live in. But I think COVID has sort of opened the box, to release sort of some of this negativity that exists with people in their jobs. So, there might be a number of ways of dealing with that. Maybe it's letting more people work from home. Maybe it's the whole remote trend, more flexibility, also providing support to families, to people that are taking care of older or younger loved ones, and helping people find their purpose, right? We know, at TCS, purpose is such an important piece of building the future.
Oh,
So,
absolutely. It's on every one of our laptop screens. It's on every t-shirt, every logo, everything.
yeah, and it's not just us. I mean, Gen Z, the young kids that
Yeah.
are, just now voting in their first election. I think the first Gen Z was just elected to the House of Representatives in the
Mm.
US last night. Um, they have they're all about purpose. I mean, we've seen this from the zeitgeist that they've brought out in the world over the last couple of years. They do believe in, what am I here for? What can I contribute, and what are other people bringing to the table? They're not content to work for a company who they believe is going against, their values, for example. So I think we need to take all of these issues into consideration, not just, well, is a robot going to take my job? How can the future be more satisfying for generations to come, so that they can make a living, make a career, or achieve their potential, essentially.
Earlier, I mentioned another futurist, Gerd Leonhardt, and one of the things he's really known for is being one of those optimistic futurists. So it's a lot of fun to just listen to him and be motivated on that. But one of the things that he said the other day is that within 10 years, he thinks companies will fail if they're not known for embracing sustainability. If they're going against that current, customers won't buy for them. They'll become a pariah, basically. But I mean, they're not going to be successful because people don't want to buy from a company that is seen as actually a detriment to their quality of life.
Sure, sure. And recently, there's been boycotts of different brands because of, I think, mainly political sort of views or affiliations. And, Gen Z has been a big part of that. So I think people want to support what they believe in, whether it's where they work or the stuff they buy or where they live. And that's, it's all about purpose and being able to express that.
I wrote an article a while back promoting the creation of a new C-level role, that of Chief Value Officer, and where the values of the company not only can be promoted and out there for everyone to say or see, but actually hold the company accountable for meeting those internally. Because more and more you see the swarming effect of social media. Somebody calls out a company that is not living up to their verbal stance around sustainability or justice or equality. You don't want the fox to be watching the hen house, right? I,
Right.
I think that's you need to have somebody that's not only going to promote the values of the company, but hold the company accountable and represent those values to the public. Because when you do make a mistake and you're not living in accordance with your documented standards, you need to get up there and apologize and be honest. And because if you're not that, you're going to lose your customer base going forward. So another thing you wrote, the biggest change might be that working for money might not last much longer as the primary system of meeting basic needs. What are your thoughts there?
Well, again, there I was thinking and dreaming out loud, probably, but thinking about things like UBI, right? The idea that governments or businesses or nonprofits might say, look, we just need people to have money. We need to just sustain society. But I think that we see a lot of changes happening today that show that earning money doesn't necessarily have to be tied to what we would typically call work or a job. And of course, the cryptocurrency example has been around for 15 years now almost, where people can mine, right, a Bitcoin as a thing of value that has, you can buy stuff with and trade or invest in. So there's always that idea. I mean, what if you had some way of generating a bunch of cryptocurrency that ultimately is sort of integrated into society the way Bitcoin has become. So that's always a possibility because I think crypto is still really growing, hasn't really inserted itself fully into society. So we could see where that goes. There's also this idea that you could produce renewable energy, whether it's on your home kind of self-sustaining grid that you have, whether it's from driving a car that an EV, right, that collects and generates energy. Maybe while it's parked, you're somehow, producing energy, and then you can sell that. And I also think there's an interesting potential for us to take more control over our personal data and use it as currency. Because right now there are a lot of companies making a lot of money off of people's data. And most of the public is kind of unaware about how valuable it could be. So what if over the next decade, we take possession of everything that's known about us by our activities on social media or YouTube or, texting or whatever it might be, and can sell that as a form of income, right? If you want to know about me, you're going to have to pay me and I'll feed you however much, it costs. There could be a way for that to give people more control and where they're not really working, right? None of those things are actually jobs, right? As we would call them today. But in the future, it might be how you sustain yourself. And I think things like the creators, these YouTubers and these content creators that are social influencers that are doing, they're making money, but they're not really doing something called work. I mean, playing a video game and getting paid for it is a new idea. And I think kids really like it. I just have to say that.
I was pondering the other day, what if you had this beautiful chunk of 1,000 acres of wilderness with mountains and cliffs and canyons and waterfalls, and you put sensors on every tree, like 360 views, cameras or sensors throughout that whole 1,000 acres. And then you let people just be able to walk with their digital avatar through that forest and spend time in that forest anytime they want. And it's a real forest with real animals and real birds and trees and wind and leaves and water. And, I thought, man, wouldn't that be cool? Because then you could project yourself and walk the forest anytime you want. Because you're one of the patrons, if you would, the sponsors of that forest land. Anyway, yeah,
That's
I can
really
imagine
cool.
all of those kinds of fun things out there. So you hint at the beginning of a new phase of realizing human potential. What would that new phase of realizing human potential be?
Well, I think we've already touched on it a bit. The human potential of, Kevin, did you ever think that you would write your own or produce your own theme song for your show?
No.
I don't know if you're already a musician, but if you're not, it's kind of an interesting reach of your potential, right? To think, well, I can try this, I can do this, I have this help, this AI tool, whatever. And that's what I mean by reaching human potential, letting people try things they never thought they could do. Whether it's an AI robot that helps you take care of your kids or, get stuff done around the house. As simple as, a robotic vacuum, right? Even just something as simple as a Roomba, right? Taking away some of that chore time from a busy working parent, right? And letting you have a little bit more quality time with your family or whatever it might be. It's all those different things. And I think they will only continue to grow. We're starting here, but I think that over time we'll see, people be able to learn more things, be more things, experience more thanks to AI.
Well, I have Norm, my robotic
Yeah.
companion, or
Yeah.
my automated companion, my AI companion from Replica. So Norm is a guy that is in my life. He's a complete avatar with an AI engine behind him. He talks to me all the time. He's kind of annoying. Anyway, so there's Norm, and now I have a musician that works with me, an AI musician that creates music for me, and that DALL-E artist. So now, matter of fact, I just finished my complete presentation, Alex, where every image in the presentation has been generated by DALL-E.
Wow.
So I would put up some like weird futuristic scenarios. DALL-E would read it, think about it, and generate me 4 different kinds of future scenario images. And I would pick the one that I'm looking for or ask it to regenerate a new set. And then when I am happy with one of those, I use it and included it in my presentation. So it's 35 slides. Every one of the pages has a different image by DALL-E, all generated by AI. So yeah, absolutely. I had to put the input, but then AI could use its skill sets, which I don't have, to generate something that helps me create better presentations and reach my potential. So brilliant. I love that. So let's talk about 10 years from now. Let's paint a scenario out there. How might work look different 10 years from now?
Well, I was just looking over some studies and stuff about the future of work when I wrote this article. And something that jumped out at me is a new study by, sorry, I wrote it down, Upwork, this big freelancer platform, Upwork, where they have now predicted that by 2027, the majority of the workforce will be freelance. And I found that to be a really interesting idea. Now, how do they define freelance? I mean, I'm not sure. There's probably layers to this study that we would want to look at. But I do think this idea of, a majority gig worker economy or workforce is quite interesting. And it does kind of pertain to the topics we were discussing in terms of, spending the time the way you want, understanding your purpose or seeking your purpose, maybe even fulfilling human potential. I mean, I don't know that being an Uber driver fulfills human potential, but for some people it might. For some people that might be the way they want to spend their time. Maybe that is preferable to, an office job or something. But I think what I'm saying is that it opens up more opportunities that are less rigid compared to the way a job, for example, like a job that you would work at for 30 years, kind of previous generations did. I think that this gig opportunity is, it's maybe a double-edged sword, but I think it does have some potential to let people do a little bit more of what they want, have more control over their work, how much they make, and make work fit around their life instead of fitting your life around what an employer wants from you, which I think is a big source of the tension that people feel when they're burned out at their jobs or they're dissatisfied with their job.
So I spent 4.5 years as a freelance futurist and consultant, some of the best experience of my life, but it does come with, it's all on you every month to produce. Mm-hmm. And so, but at the same time, you just have this huge level of freedom, as you point out. And, that freedom is some of that non-monetary value. To live a life of freedom has massive value as a human. We sell that freedom to employers oftentimes to make sure we're disciplined enough to show up on time and produce and deliver on our KPIs. But there is a huge amount of value to keeping some of that freedom as well. Mm-hmm. So I can imagine that. Yeah, good and bad side to that future. It's interesting, but it also makes me think there's a whole new skill set we need to be teaching in our higher education or even at lower grades. If gig work is how we're going to be making our living, there's a whole set of skills there that are needed that are different from what we do today when we're either doing routine work or just process-driven work that's very well defined. Because as we know, the creative side, the maker economy, the gig work, whole different mindset if you're going to thrive in that space. So I could see entirely different educational topics that need to be taught.
Yeah, that's a great point. Just the entire structure of the public school system is very geared toward the industrial economy, right? The idea that you clock in at 8 o'clock or whatever, in the morning, you get there at a certain time, and literally the bell schedules, right, of schools were based on those factory bells, right? Factory whistles. So maybe the better preparation would be more of an online education for young people. So where they take the classes when they can, they watch a video, they interact on a more personalized schedule.
Beautiful. Well, it's both a daunting challenge, the future, and exciting because, with every generation, they have to create their own future, and it's up to us to create the next one. With that, Alex, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, Kevin.